Must be a ball game. So anything new in Coventry? A little bit different type of forum this evening. For those of you who may know, I'm your solicitor, Stephen Angell. I ask that there not be a podium or anything so that folks can come right down front and ask your questions. So before we get started, just a couple of ground rules. If you have a question, don't shout it out. Come on down. Just give us your name, tell us where you live, and ask your questions. I'm here to talk tonight exclusively about Johnson's Pond. Obviously, there's been a lot going on, and we had a big victory on Friday. Big victory. I'm not going to take up the whole night just talking to you, but I want to give you a sense before we get started how we got to this point. You know, I came here on November 28th of 2022. Many of you have heard that, some of you may not. And this is a new council, essentially. There was a new majority on the council, and there were a lot of changes made to the town. And one of the things that the council immediately talked to me about is, what are we going to do about Johnson's Pond? And just to give you a little bit of context, the Johnson's Pond situation and the receivership at Center of New England are two of the largest pieces of municipal litigation, really almost in the history of the state. And you have both of them going on at the same time. And both of them seem like a very long, protracted battle. My mode on almost anything, particularly on matters of great importance like this, is not to run in and kick the door down. It's really to assess the situation and see what we need. We really weren't any place with respect to a strategy on this pond. We were in reaction mode when I got here. And we took measure to put together a team. And I went to the council and said, we're going to need to put together a team. I know what we need to solve this problem. And it's going to take a little while. We're pushing a very large stone, pun intended, from a dead push, from a dead stop. And, you know, the other thing too is it's very difficult to get experts involved in a very contentious matter that they know is already in litigation or at some point will be litigated. It's not easy. We were very fortunate to have obtained the services of what I consider to be some of the finest professional engineers with expertise in dam management, dams and hydrology, as well as land use experts, appraisers. As I've said before, trying to find an appraiser with experience of the kind necessary to appraise the value of the pond, the dam, its structures, and all of that jazz. It's not easy to do. And certainly someone who has credibility within the court system as well, someone who has testified, who is seasoned. So you really, you know, look, in litigation, there's the expert who can sell almost anything, but substantively doesn't have much to say. And the expert who substantively is a genius, but can't get 3 words out in a row. We needed both. So the council has allowed me to put together my team. Not just a team of experts, but the lawyers who work with me. We have no fewer between and among lawyers and experts, no fewer than 15 people who have their hands in this. And, you know, my job, among the many jobs, is to make sure that all the instruments play on key and make nice music. Not an easy situation. I know you were all immeasurably frustrated by what's gone on here with Johnson's Pond. And frankly, when I looked at it, you certainly have reason to be. Which is why I knew that when we took aim at this problem with an eye towards solving it and hitting the bullseye, we needed to be right. And impatience ran high. I get it. What the hell is the solicitor doing about this? Well, in 18 months, we really have created a body of work here that just doesn't put a Band-Aid on the problem. I believe in the long term, we're going to solve this problem. And the first step to solving the problem was regaining control of that land. And we have. I'm going to explain a little bit about what we did. I know you may have questions about that. Some of you may have heard, some of you did not. The condemnation process culminated on Friday with the court permitting us to enter an order that vested title in the town. We get an order signed in court. We had our order ready. The clerk stamped it up and entered it. I came to town hall and recorded it in the chain of title. And what we decided ultimately, after we offered the other side $1.527 million, was that we don't really need all of this land. Okay. Namely, what you see here is parcel B. Right here. 69 plus acres. We don't need it. We took all the trouble. The engineers took a hard look at this piece right here. From the waterway right down to parcel B. And they said, we really need that. That's necessary. It's necessary for repairs, proper management, and so forth. And then, of course, you turn to your surveyor, and they have to make sure they get the lines right. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about the lines, because from what you see here, I know I've heard from certain members of the public, well, I don't think this was included. I don't think that was included. We'll be including everything. Don't worry. But we didn't take parcel B. Wants to build on it? Let them build on it. We don't need it. We're not going to build on it. Instead, we took what we needed to effectuate the work to repair the dam in the interim and to take a look at it in repairing it long term. If you want to know if I've had discussions with the folks at DEM, I've had exhaustive discussions with the folks at DEM. We've been speaking on a daily basis for quite some time. So with that and against that backdrop, oh, I left out a good part. We only paid $157,000 into the registry of the court. You know, I said to someone who asked me a question, why is it so important to be so precise? Because for too long, particularly as I look at center of New England, as I look at what happened here and in some other things that I've encountered in the last 18 months or so since I've been here, we need to sharpen our pencils in Coventry and sharpen our minds and do it right, and send a message to everyone who wants to come into your community, and my adoptive community, that if you're going to come here and you're going to misbehave, we're not going to tolerate it. Just that simple. It's unfortunate that, as I understand it, that this behavior has come from someone with local ties. I think many of you had seen my comments the week of April 1st when, you know, damage was done to that spillway into the riverbed. I was angry. I was angry. I was angry for every one of you, and angry, just outraged as a person that someone would be that reckless to do what they did. Didn't go into that riverbed with a plan, okay? Our engineers have a plan. By the way, the first thing that we need to get permission from DEM to do is to take the giant pile of rocks away from the face of the dam so we can take a look at it with an eye towards giving you folks a summer. So we'll be meeting with the folks at DEM on Monday. My team, including the engineers and the folks at DEM, so that we can talk about what our folks are putting together as a plan. And this is our wish list. So bear with me, okay? I want you to listen carefully. What DEM allows the town to do may be very different than what we want to see in the interim. But I think in terms of a summer for recreational purposes, if we can manage this, if we can put a temporary fix in place and manage this at a -15, that should give you folks a pond for the summer. That's the goal, at least on our team. With that said, I'll take your questions and I'll stay as long as I need to answer them. There's your microphone. Come on up. No question is a silly question. I will tell you this, though. If your last name is Socia and you're connected to Socia Holdings, or you're here to do their bidding for them, someone here knows that, please speak up, because the town of Coventry is done taking their crap, and I'm not taking their questions.
Could you please explain what -15 means?
Yeah, right now DEM has a compliance order that they have imposed or had imposed on Socia Holdings as a result of Socia's activities during the week of April 1st. And as part of that compliance order, the owner of the dam must maintain the water 30 inches below spillway. And that's just too low, obviously, for recreational purposes. But for safety purposes, that's what DEM has imposed. Now, one of the things that happened on Friday is that I stood up in court and I agreed that the town would be substituted as the responsible party for purposes of that compliance order. So, oh, and by the way, we're not paying the fines. He is. And right now, that's about $225,000. So we're not taking the debt. So that's where the -15 comes from. We want to raise the water level to the point where instead of it being 30 inches below, that it's only 15. And that, according to our scientists, says that will allow the pond and its wildlife and so forth to flourish and to give folks a summer. One of the other things that we did on Friday right after court, we had quite a lot of activity aside from, recording things and communicating with folks. We had our experts on the scene on Friday. We had DPW there. We had public safety there. We had chief there of the police department and his folks. Central Coventry Fire Department was there. We cut the locks off. We've changed the locks. We're working actively to change electric service and other things. And most importantly, we wanted to get into the gatehouse and see what sort of shape it was in. Very important. With an eye towards developing a dam operations manual of a very rudimentary nature, which, by the way, this dam has never had a dam operations manual. That's best practices. We are fortunate to have the continued services of a longtime gatekeeper who has served in that capacity for over 40 years. And he'll be bringing our folks up to speed and working with our engineers with respect to how the gates are functioning. These are wooden gates. There are 3 low-level outlet gates. They're wooden. There's a manual override for each of the gates, but there is a motor for each. And we want to make sure that everyone is brought up to speed on how they work. So there was a lot of activity on the dam. There were council people there as well. They wanted to put their eyes on the dam. I know that Council Vice President LeBlanc was there and Councilman Pascal was there. So very eager to run a class on how to breach a door on the gatehouse, I might add. So, I was pleased that at least for now anyway, there's no obvious defect or damage in the gatehouse. But one of the things I can tell you, you've heard a lot made about the maintenance that the town was supposed to do or the maintenance that the town didn't do, okay? Well, I don't think you need to be an expert in turf management. They haven't cut a blade of grass since the wintertime. Okay, so DPW will be after that this week. The other thing that I can tell you is that there's essentially what's called there's a gate that runs the entire length of the gatehouse as it faces the pond. And it's essentially a trash rack, which as water flows to the lower level outlet gates into the gatehouse, it's supposed to catch the trash. Well, I don't know how anything's coming out of those lower level outlet gates because that trash rack is full, hasn't been cleaned. Trees, I mean, literally trees, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches in diameter floating in there, along with leaves and all sorts of other debris that are gumming it up. Public Works will get after that this week too, I understand. So they'll put on their waders and get in the water and deal with that. They'll be cutting the grass, doing the maintenance and getting those things under control because that's very important. Which, by the way, since I've been here, the complaint always was, DPW never cut the grass. Be frank with you, I had a key to the gate. I would look on my own. They're always doing something there. Weeds were pulled, grass was cut. So, but I do know that since the winter time this year, none of it was done. None of it. So from the time that the town lease ended until now, nothing's been cut, nothing's been done. So, okay. Other questions?
Mark Lamoy, 34 Island Drive. I'm the president of. Thank you. President of the Johnson Pond Civic Association. I have a couple of questions, but before I do, I want to take the opportunity not only for the Civic Association, but all the residents of Johnson's Pond and Coventry to thank this council. As Solicitor Angell said, when this new council leadership came in November of 2022, took a different turn. It went from being defensive to offensive. As someone involved in this, I was involved in this for the past 5 years, believe it or not. The last 4 years, spent countless hours in court in front of the judge, listening to all the testimony back and forth. The town, it wasn't for lack of effort at all, but the new council leadership took it in a different direction. And I want to sincerely thank for getting to this point. Yes, it did take a little longer, and we all wished it would have, but here we are. Thank you. I have a couple of questions comes to mind on parcel B. Number one, will Social Holdings be receiving a nice tax bill for it? And number two, can you, one of the biggest questions I get, the most frequent questions I get recently is about all the trees that were clear cut there over the large parcel of land.
Sure. So yes to the tax bill. Wasn't much we could do about the trees while it was going on, although, land clearing comes with its own, you own a piece of land, right? I'm not prepared to tell you what I'm going to do about that, the administration, but wait and see. And I want to be clear, there are some things that I will not be talking about tonight. For example, the next steps in this, I will not be talking about what our plans are to handle the additional litigation. We own a pond. That's the good news. It's also the bad news. The bad news is we have a dam to fix. not just in the short term, but also in the long term. We also have several pieces of litigation pending with Social Holdings, now with the Department of Environmental Management, that we need to manage and deal with effectively. The most important one of the most important pieces of litigation is now we move into the damages phase with respect to just what is the value of what we have taken. And of course, you've all heard what Social Holdings claims it's worth and all of that, okay? That's gonna take a while. It's, you know, it's a civil action. As you know, I don't generally speak about the specifics of the case when it's going on, nor should any competent attorney, except to say that I like the position I'm in now than the position I was in before. So I can't stand here and tell you we're gonna be fine and that 157 is all we're going to pay, okay? 157 is the acquisition price that we put on it under these particular circumstances. That might change depending upon what a judge rules. And it might change depending upon a variety of different factors that I'm, you know, not going to get into here and now. But I feel very good about our position, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't. Now, that's irrespective of the cost to repair, okay? Which I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of that because, quite frankly, there are options with respect to the cost of repair that go directly to the appraisal, which will be litigated, which will go directly to the engineering, which will be scrutinized, I'm sure, in the upcoming litigation. And then, of course, you know, I'm going to talk about public benefit for a minute, okay? You can't just condemn something as a municipality or a governmental entity because you feel like it. Just because you don't like somebody or like something that they're doing with their property, you just can't take it from them, okay? That type of taking can be unconstitutional. The key to condemnation is, hey, what's the public benefit? What is the public benefit? And certainly there is a greater benefit for those who immediately front the water and those who are immediately behind them. But what is the public benefit? In the court, in its analysis, will look to just what does Coventry's leadership have on its mind with respect to the pond benefiting more than just the first and second tier folks around the pond. This council's made it abundantly clear in the legislation, the resolutions that's been passed, that there be a public benefit to this. And I'm going to tell you what that means. So in court on Friday, and I've never had this happen, but I guess it helps to get your position out there. The week before last, I happened to be on the Dan York show because there was plenty that we could talk about that we couldn't talk about before. And Judge Leach, who's the judge assigned to the case, stood up in court and he said, oh, by the way, he said, I have to put it on the record. I was in my car on the way home and I heard Attorney Angell talking about Johnson's Pond. He said, and he went to great lengths to talk about what public benefit there will be to the town of Coventry as a whole. So I would really like you to tell me about that. And I got up and I told him about it. And the council, you know, how it gets done is a little ways off, I'm sure. And we have other immediate concerns. The council certainly does. But the goal here is to have legitimate public access with new usable boat ramps, with a beach, with a pavilion of some kind, with restrooms, with parking, with an ability either to have a contractor or someone else come in and as a vendor and rent kayaks and other things that can be utilized for recreational purposes on the pond. And that's really, you know, you'll want to pay attention to that at the council level. I would suggest not in the immediate coming months. We've got a few other things on the grid. But, you know, they really are resolute in providing that access. And they thought about it because I told them as part of the acquisition process, we must provide a legitimate public benefit. And that's the public benefit. And they are resolute in shaping that up for the future of Coventry. So that's important. That's very important to put out there so that folks know that. But that is where the council is where their head is with this. And it's actually a very good idea. So other comments, other questions? And I want to just limit it to questions, you know, and I appreciate Mr. Lemoy's comments, certainly in his position as president of the Pond Association. Questions, please.
Yes, hi, Paul Stevens. Seems like a lot of acreage there. How did you come up with 157,000? And also, I know you answered my question about the public beach and bathhouses and all that. I'm sure that's at least a couple of years away. And I'd like to know how that would be paid for.
Mhm.
I've been a resident of this town for over 30 years. I've never had access to that pond. I've been on it one time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is, I don't have to tell you all, but this is one of the largest inland fresh bodies of water in the entire state. And, you know, the council wants it to be in the opportunity for everyone in town to enjoy it. How will it be paid for? It's a good question because I can tell you this. I mean, certainly I'm sure the council will find a way to pay for it. We found a way to pay for what we're doing up to this point. It was important in our analysis of taking the pond, which is why we didn't take a piece that we didn't need because it saves money. Okay, it saves money that we can put into other things, and immediately we have, you know, money to be spent on dam repairs. The acquisition cost of this town doesn't have a bottomless pit of money, right? You all have savings accounts for your homes. Something goes wrong, you have to dip into that savings account, right? Well, the town has a savings account too. They have a fund balance. There's an unallocated fund balance that sits there for purposes just like this, by the way, one-off type purposes. How far they go with that is another story, right? We have some ARPA money remaining. I have made a recommendation to the council that certainly would be an immediate source of funding for repair purposes. But I know that the council will be evaluating funding sources for a variety of different purposes. The main focus right now is making the dam itself safe and reconstructing the spillway. So, you know, those are some pretty significant resources. I don't think, however, you know, I've certainly made my thoughts known to the council, and we've had a pretty healthy discussion about what comes next to manage this once things get under control in the development of this area. You know, people have, I've heard the dam management district piece used a lot. Those are the two words, dam management, dam management. Dam management functions like a fire district, okay? And we don't have good luck with fire districts in Coventry. The council doesn't want to lose control of this. And so it would have to be another agency within the town that would manage it, that would be under the authority of the council. So those plans will become known, I think, as, you know, they make themselves known. The council directs them, and really we find out, you know, what the resources look like over the next few years to be directed toward that. But I can tell you that they are absolutely resolute in their desire and their very strong will to have public access, as I've described for you, and even more so. So,
Good evening. Tony Ferrucci, 91 Isla Capri Road, Coventry. First of all, I want to say thank you for all of your efforts. First time I've heard or hear you speak. And I really appreciated your strategies that you brought forward to make this happen. So thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Second, you answered most of the other questions I had in mind, so thank you for that in advance. So there's two specific ones. Dealing with public and the protection of public. Is it fair to say not only is the town of Coventry going to benefit on a public basis, but by taking control of the dam and ensuring the dam ultimately serves its long-term purpose, doesn't that affect all of the public communities downstream from us?
Sure it does. You know, it's wildlife, it's plant life. Heaven only knows if that thing blows, certainly creates some issues downstream, creates some issues upstream too, by the way. So, you know, this impoundment of water is going to continue to fill. And whether there's a dam there or there isn't, okay, just the way the topography is, water is going to move that way in some fashion or another. So this notion that somebody could drain the pond and build something in the middle of the pond is just, it's ridiculous. I won't even go down that road. But to your point, yes, the environment benefits greatly. In fact, in the summertime, which is why a drought is probably worse in some ways for the folks using the pond. It's worse than a heavy rain season, because in order to keep the wildlife and the plant life alive downstream, you need a minimum stream flow, right, to do that. So no matter how much water's in that bathtub, we have to let out a minimum amount during the summertime to feed that wildlife. So.
Thank you. And then the second question is, I'm extremely excited to hear that there's an opportunity this summer to have some recreational opportunities on the pond. And it sounds like your prelim work with DEM is advanced enough to be able to make that happen. Is there any further appeals process this summer that can stymie that plan? Or is your next level of a negotiation and settlement gonna be able to keep control of the dam from coming back at us to say, getting a stay and saying you can't do anything until the other problem is resolved?
Sure, let's demystify the appeal process, okay, as best I can without trying to have law class 101 in civil procedure. So bear with me. You know, you can appeal the winner of two ants running up the wall and who gets there first, right? That's just the way the world works today. Will they do that? I really don't know. Their proper course, in my view, would be to apply to the state Supreme Court for what's called a stay, okay? Or some other. They're in no position to do that. They did not intervene. They did not appear as a party in the condemnation action. So it's what's called an ex parte action. I expected them to intervene. They didn't. Okay, great. So it's just us. So no, they don't have a right to appeal. And my feeling would be that even if they had intervened and they moved to get a stay of the judge agreeing with us, they'd have little hope of that, very little hope of that. So this event that happened last Friday of the town condemning and taking possession of the pond, good, bad, or indifferent, gang, we own a pond. That's it. All right. We own what we took. So nobody's going to change that. Right. So. Not unless the council changes its mind, and I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, no, there's no going back from that.
Norman Sylvester from 115 Reservoir Road. Could you give me an estimate about how much time will pass before we'll be able to put our docks in and boats in?
It's a great question. The real answer is going to come after next Monday. Next Monday, I, along with my co-counsels. I'll only be one of them. So there'll be 2 lawyers and 2 engineers in a room with the folks from DEM. And our engineers are working on a temporary solution to make the dam safe. We need to be responsive, you know, to the town of Coventry citizens to give them a summer, but we first need to be responsible with respect to the safety. So how quickly? I am hoping by the end of July at the most to
most?
raise the pond level.
Oh.
At the most. And I say that because we need DEM to agree with us. Okay, I'm not going to stand here and tell you what my discussions have been with our engineers, but we have some ideas on how to raise that level in sooner than that.
Yeah.
Now DEM needs to go along with us.
Okay, thank you.
I think we can be persuasive with DEM.
Michael Scalzo, 221 Ayoho Road. Is there some type of restraining order on social family members on that 10 acres? And
Yes.
is there security or cameras? Because from what I understand, he's very vindictive.
Well,
I'm just saying I'm just saying,
I
is
heard
there some
something
type
about
of,
that.
is there some type of security?
I'll tell you some of what we've put in place. So there is a no trespass order that's been issued with respect to the town's property, and in particular, what you see here in red. He violates that order, will take steps. With that said, he does have property on the pond, and he is able to boat on the pond just like everyone else is. But he doesn't get to take his boat and land it on the earthen dam like it's a Higgins boat on Omaha Beach. That's not going to happen. So I have great faith in our men and women in blue to enforce the law. Great faith in the town manager in making that occur. So.
Richard Foster, 83 Indian Trail. I have 2 questions. Is this picture that's on the screen the entire area that the pond is or the town is taking?
So parcel B, we're not taking, okay? But everything that you see highlighted in red roughly, because it's a horrible picture, I know for these purposes, is roughly what we've taken at this point. And I say at this point.
Okay. And second of all, I'm sure most people have noticed that we have pond grass growing because DEM hasn't been able to treat the water. Is there any arrangements to have DEM treat the water?
It's on the list for Monday.
Thank you.
So one of the other frequent questions I get is regarding the public access, and I realize it's way premature but have there been any discussions as far as would the public access be limited to just Coventry residents, as only Coventry resident taxpayers have paid for this land?
Yeah, it's a great question. The short answer is no. I've not been a party to any of those discussions. But, you know, I mean, that's more of a political question than a legal question. So. Other questions? Come on, you guys have been pent up for so long.
I don't believe
If you wouldn't mind, there are other folks, if we just give them a chance.
one quick, I don't remember my question being answered about acreage
Yep.
that was involved.
Yep.
And how you came about the price.
So I'm gonna give you the best answer that I can, okay? I thought lawyers, you could get a bunch of lawyers in a room and nobody could agree, okay? You get a lot of land experts in the room, and there's quite a range as to the amount of acreage that's involved, okay? So what we did was, rather than have this debate over just how much acreage there is, we declared a footprint which came directly from the land description in the original Quidnick deed, less that 69-acre patch, okay? And that's how we came to it. And really, when you think about it, okay, with respect, the pond itself and its flowage rights really only has value if you're going to use it for an industrial purpose. As an owner, it doesn't have any other value. And the only thing that a dam and a spillway and a gatehouse and all of that, how many people have kids in college? Right? And how many people help to pay the bills for their kids? That's what a dam is, okay? They're gonna continue to come and say, gee, can I have $10? Can I have $100? Can you pay my Visa bill? My car needs to be repaired. Who in the world would want to own a dam unless you're a governmental entity or have some industrial purpose for it? And I'm not gonna get into the speculation of why. We all know why somebody else bought this thing who wasn't. But everything from here, right from where the water ends, back, doesn't have a lot of value. It has a lot of expense, okay? The green piece next to parcel B, and Mike, can we go to that other picture? There's another piece. Here we go. That's the one. Yeah. So if you look at this one, there's your parcel B, okay? And there's your parcel A. This is the piece we took, okay? And when you look at that, that has value in that a portion of it could be developed. Developed for what is the answer, right? So what we did was we evaluated a range of options for that piece of land. And then the appraiser tells us which of those options is realistic, okay? We just can't, you can't put anything there. And it makes certain assumptions, like you'll only pay about $900,000 to bring a road in there. I mean, if you're a developer and you have to bring a road in for 900 grand, you've got to get that money back when you develop the parcel and sell the houses or whatever it is that you've got there. In addition to that, some of the assumptions that would be made is that the state of Rhode Island would allow you to cross their bike path, right? And how much traffic are they willing to allow to go over that bike path? And you know as well as I do that developers make more money when they put more units. Well, if you have more units, you're driving more traffic over a bike path. I don't think the state's going to like that. So there's a lot of hypotheticals involved. And when you boil it all down, the net number is 157, which factors out, by the way, some of the cost of the repair. Because we've been driven to that cost of repair immediately as a result of the activities during the week of April 1st. I think everybody's okay. Anybody else? I saw other movement. Yes, sir. Don't the ladies have any questions? We take questions from ladies too, you know.
Howard Delude, 20 Marion Drive. Just more of a request. Part of the difficulty with all this has been the up and down of the water, not what's going on. The request is really that we have sort of a communication plan or strategy, maybe it's through Mark or whatever, what's going on in terms of the water level, just so you can kind of plan everything out. So if you have a date when it's going to go to 15 inches down, it'd be great to kind of know that when you guys know that. So that's just a request.
When we know more, I'll certainly provide that, because it's really now a piece of litigation with DEM. When I know more, you'll know more, because I'll communicate it to the town manager, and with the approval of council leadership, we'll get that information right out to you.
Great.
Whatever is ours to share, we'll share.
Thank
Don Nestor, Hill Farm Camp Road. First of all, I'd like to really congratulate you and your team on an excellent job. Really, I'm sure this has been in a lot of people's thoughts and maybe your team also, regulation of the pond, the quality of the water, police. I've been on the pond living there. I've lived around there my whole life and fished and used the pond. I've lived on the pond for the last 14 years. I can probably count on my two hands the times I've actually seen police or DEM watching after boats. What about things like motor size? You mentioned, well, we want to rent kayaks, and I'm all for that. But with 200 horsepower motors flying by you, you're going to swamp a lot of people.
Yeah.
Also, one more thing I'll add to that is the use of fertilizer around the whole pond. Washes in, and we talk about the weeds, and it's like a vicious circle. We put chemicals in to get rid of the weeds. We put chemicals on the grass because we want green lawns, and the cycle continues. Just wondering if some thought has been given to these issues.
Well, you know, I can tell you that, you know, the good news is the town of Coventry owns it. And part of being an owner means you have to come up with some rules, right? It's like having kids. Yeah, and you know, that's going to be a much larger discussion with the council because, you know, DEM, just so you guys know, DEM regulates dockage for sure. But, you know, as far as policing the pond,
yeah,
it's no different than any other waterway. We've got to do something about that for sure.
Wake zone's another thing.
Yeah, and I think the council is, you know, the council's here, they're listening.
I
You know,
hope so.
They're not participating tonight because we don't want an open meetings violation. We don't want to have this discussion among council members and run into a problem with the Attorney General's office, but they're here, they're listening. And it's a very valid concern. It's one of those things that it's on, you know, it's part, but by the way, this is just a daily fold.
Right.
I've got a whole piece of my office that I think we killed a bunch of trees, but to your point, it's on the list.
Thanks again.
Yeah, bet.
Ed Overton, 461 Shady Valley Road. My question is, I'm going to lead up to the question. Last year, with the full reevaluation, most of the residents on the pond got hit with high tax or reevaluation anywhere from 19 to 40%, which is, you know, a lot of it was legit. Well, my question is now, you've got a big note to pay for all the work you're going to do in the future. And there are rumors floating around that a lot of the people who live on the pond have water frontage is going to be assessed another assessment just to help pay for this. Is the town, are you people discussing this?
There are a lot of solutions to that being discussed, and it's not on the table right now to be talked about tonight.
Okay.
It's going to be a matter of, I think, what the council and others feel that, you know, the town can afford, right? We're going to have to do this in steps and stages depending upon the price tag. So.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? Come on, ladies, it's all men.
Yeah, Steve Riley, Osprey Drive in Coventry. I just want to thank you. It's a very novel approach, and I'm impressed. Secondly, my question is, has the Attorney General's office been aware of all these developments?
So I'll answer that question first. Yes. The attorney at the Attorney General's office, the Special Attorney General who's been assigned to this, is a gentleman named Nicholas Vaz. And among the many people that I've communicated with daily on occasion has been Mr. Vaz. He's the lawyer that successfully defended Social Holdings' constitutional challenge to the the Dam Permitting Act in federal court. And naturally, which is on appeal, and naturally, he was concerned about the timing of what we were doing. There was only so much I could share with him, but certainly as things progressed, we put our heads together on more than a couple of things, particularly with respect to the DEM enforcement action. Just to be clear, DEM was gearing up to hit Social Holdings rather hard. There was an immediate compliance order that was issued that was extended simply because Social did not retain an engineer. And when they did, what the engineer produced was insufficient as far as DEM was concerned. So we stepped into that, okay? Necessarily, as part of that discussion, I've had many fruitful discussions with Mr. Vaz at the AG's office. They're on our side. But in theory, they also have a job to do too. If we decide not to behave responsibly with DEM, they're going to look to nail us down too. Your next question.
Yeah, the other question would be, and you've kind of hit on it, but I was hoping you might be able to elaborate a little bit where you can. April 1st took place, or the week of April 1st, and to me, that was, a poke in the eye because the federal court had ruled that the Dam Permit Act was constitutional, and they go and bring a excavator down there without a permit, to my knowledge.
Well, what happened the week of April 1st, there are several things that happened. First, the lease expired at midnight on the 31st of March, right? And prior to that, my office had filed a restraining order. We had applied to the court for restraining order against Social Holdings, requiring that they hold the status quo, because we suspected, quite honestly, that they would do something, okay, to further torture the citizens rather than, behave as a responsible dam owner. And we all saw what happened. And the court's reaction was, there are orders in place and we're content that he'll abide by them. Look, I mean, look, I'm a lawyer. I've seen restraining orders on a variety of different levels. And, unfortunately for men and women who find themselves in an abusive relationship and they get a restraining order, that's not going to help you if the abuser kicks your door down in the middle of the night. Okay? And that's essentially what happened here. I mean, they did something that we thought they would do, something reckless. And that's what happened. DEM immediately reacted to that by issuing that compliance order on April 3rd, which is pretty quick for DEM, by the way. I mean, it's pretty, but I will tell you, the most important thing that happened that week and the most unfortunate thing that happened that week is that we had a dam that was in safe condition, okay? And because of those actions that were taken that week, it was deemed unsafe. And my engineers saw the drone footage. I saw the pictures. I saw, it's unsafe. And that's why the water level had to be lowered.
Given DEM's response time by the recent fines that they've levied, is it safe to say that that is still being considered? I'm just concerned because you're talking about an expense to repair the dam, and seems to me like maybe they should be underwriting part of that.
No,
They being
Well, let's
social.
let's be very clear. First of all, the town isn't going to be hit with the fines that accrued to Social Holdings, okay? And right now, that's well over $200,000. The second thing is, You know, no one other than the town of Coventry has talked about what caused the damage to that dam the week of April 1st. The causation is very important because, to your point, if in fact those actions the actions of the prior owner caused that dam to be unsafe, we will pursue him for those damages. Yes.
Thank you again for your efforts.
Craig Verastro, 25 Clubhouse Road. If we've learned nothing over the last 4 to 5-ish years, is that there is no limit to the extent of the hijinks that the Socia family will pull to try to get their way. Are we not worried about the fact that they own almost 70 acres so close to the dam still and what they're going to do next?
Well, we have code enforcement mechanisms with respect to land development. There is a permitting process. There's a planning board. There's a zoning board if they need a zone change. I feel comfortable that we're in better position to regulate whatever he has on his mind next. Because I agree with you. I mean, it's pretty clear that chaos just didn't exist in Max was it the Get Smart, right? And
Yeah.
It's chaos.
I'm just afraid that he'll come up with something and it'll just mean more litigation, more headaches. Would it
Well,
not have been better to just take the whole thing and be done with it? Even though it was more money?
we didn't need it. Okay. I mean, look,
Well,
we're not
we
gonna,
might.
we can't take land that we don't need, especially if we don't need it for a public purpose. And he's free to develop his land, just like a lot of other people that we may or may not care for. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Humphrey. I live at 38 Pine Tree Road in Coventry. I have two questions. The first one is, now that it is a public pond, would we be able to, and maybe the council has begun to look into state and federal funding to help, as I understand it, a pretty significant cost to fix the dam?
That's being evaluated.
Right. And my second point is, I know I have a row full of people, my neighbors at Pine Tree Road, I think they're up here too, is we haven't seen it on the map yet. We're across from the Zeke's Bridge, the DEM boat launch, which is open to the public. Is that still considered part of the pond down where we are? Down near Zeke's Bridge, and there's several streets around that, is all considered part of Johnson's Pond. We haven't seen it on the map yet.
As I said before, what we did with this that was up here, we followed the footprint that was in the deed of conveyance. Now, as we, not our deed of conveyance, but the prior deed, we took what Socia bought less parcel B. If there is other parcels of land that are necessary for for proper management purposes, my recommendation will be that the council takes it. My immediate concern, look, when you don't own something, just like many of you own property, if you need to find out where your property lines are, you have to do a survey, right? Well, you own the property, so the surveyor can go on your property and do a survey. When you don't own the property, you've got to get a court order to do the survey, and this isn't exactly an easy job. Now that we own it, I'll be looking to have the council approve the funds to do a survey. Yeah, to make sure we get it right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Gail Whitaker, 1 Allison Avenue. I have a question. Socia bought this for a lot more money.
Mhm.
He only put so much down. He still has balance to pay.
Mhm.
We are not responsible for any of that, correct?
No.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have a question for you.
Hello, Steve Santilli.
I have a
Chris
question
Landry?
for you.
Yes,
You're wearing a shirt that says Martha's Vineyard.
yes.
Does anybody know who Martha was and why she had a vineyard?
I have two questions. The first one, in the past, when we were under the old lease, they had certain dates throughout the year when the pond would be at spillway, and it would be stepped down in the fall. Is the town gonna basically kind of try to follow that old
Yeah.
plan?
The lease took some recognition of what the historical norms were in operating the pond. We're now looking at it through a different lens to some degree, but there will be drawdowns at different points. I will tell you, if we can get a construction schedule and funding in place, more than likely there will be a drawdown when this season is over, so that, you know, they can get into that riverbed and get that dam repaired. Anytime there's maintenance, there's a drawdown. I mean, sometimes it's an emergency basis like you're seeing now, so you suffer. But there are environmental reasons around the purpose for drawing it down. I can tell you this, we won't let the pond fill and wait for the first ice storm to hit before we pull the plug out so we can rip your docks out. I think we'll end that practice. So.
The second question was the parcel that the town took and the other one that we didn't take. Are those, majority of that, are they considered wetland? Because the river runs right through the middle of them?
Well, one of the things that I can tell you is, and you talk about price. So the contract price between Social Holdings and Quidnick Reservoir Company was approximately $1.7 million. And that price was arrived at a time when the Department of Environmental Management had less of a requirement for a wetlands buffer from the various bodies of water. That has since changed. So state law now changes the wetlands buffer in some of these areas to a large extent, which makes the usability, if you will, of the land, well, you have less to use, right? So that plays a role here.
All right, thank you. And thank you for all your work on this project.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Dean Hudak, Shady Valley. Do we know where the public access is going to be? Because I've heard the public access was going to be next to the spillway, which seems kind of a dangerous place.
Yeah, it's not going to be near the spillway. It is a dangerous place. There's other land that the town does own. But when you look at the ordinance that the council put in place at my recommendation, it will allow the council to condemn other open parcels for use. And my guess would be that, you know, we'll engage a planner to do, you know, a plan for the public access with an eye toward best placement of that.
Perfect.
So we'll figure that out, I guess.
Okay, and thanks again.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Come on, you guys have all these pent up questions. I could not have given you all the information you need. And we'll do this again as there are developments. I'm, you know, to the extent I'm able to speak, I'm happy to do so.
Hello, Gia Howard, 955 Town Farm Road. I've lived on this pond my whole life and it's been in my family since before there ever was a pond. My biggest concern, even before the recreation, is the environment. And I'm wondering if there's any plans to, with DEM, with maybe URI, to have someone looking at the environmental impact.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at that with DEM. I mean, certainly last summer with some of the drawdown, I'm sure many of you may have noticed that there were exposed turtle nesting areas and some other things. And, you know, we'll be working with them in terms of, you know, a best practices approach to managing the pond, which will be recommended to the council that that's adopted. Now, whether it's the town that manages, the pond and the dam, or it's some other entity within town, we're going to work with DEM, and I know the council will want to see that. So they've expressed that to me.
Kim Santilli, 71 Crestline Drive. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we were not able to touch our docks, our beach, or anything in fear of social taking retaliation against us. So a lot of our docks have now been bent and destroyed because of the water coming up, the water coming down. He was great with, in the wintertime, bringing the water up, so it freezes, and what we had is now ruined, but we had to leave it like that for 4 or 5 years. So not asking for the town or anyone to repair it, when can we feel safe to repair the beaches and our sand?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you just generally, what the approach is going to be here, at least in the short term. The approach is to make the dam safe and to bring the water up. As I said, our goal, and working with the engineers, 15 inches below spillway should give folks what they need for the summer. That would be the goal. And then obviously, when the dam is in good condition or safe condition, is when we can send water over that spillway to keep the pond at spillway in season. And then obviously there'll be a point at which, there'll be a drawdown for a variety of reasons, because you have certain things you want to kill at various points in the year, and you draw the water down to do that. It'll be more of a predictable schedule, I would suggest to you. And certainly I have no doubt that the council and the town manager will communicate through him on the town's website about that. They're very good at that. This is new for us. We actually have something we control. Can you imagine? So we're kind of getting used to that. So, but the goal is to make sure that we don't damage people's docks, and to manage the pond in such a way where it minimizes the likelihood that happens. And that's why I joked a little bit about the ice, right? Because I knew in years past, in the last 3 or 4 years, what the owner had done was allow the pond to freeze and then let all the water up so it rips. Yeah, no, the goal here is not to damage people's docks. Certainly we want to, it's just the opposite, to try to help people preserve that.
Hi, I'm Joe Bocchiaro, 40 Pine Tree Road, and thanks again for the terrific effort.
You're welcome.
My question is, it seems at this point, we've had a couple of severe flooding rains during the winter, the early spring, and with the changes in climate that are expected, and the weather changes here, hurricanes and so forth, tornadoes, will there be efforts during the repair of the dock, of the dam, to prepare for better resiliency for the future?
Yeah, the real key to better resiliency in managing the water level will be a more precise calibration and operation of the lower level outlet gates. And the goal ultimately is to have that controlled remotely from the Department of Public Works. Now, what I can tell you, that is not on the grid right away. Right now, as best we know, the lower level outlet gates are functioning as designed, albeit clogged up with a bunch of junk at the moment. There is an overdue dive inspection that needs to be done. That will need to be done in fairly short order, just to see what, ground zero is at the moment. But the water level will be appropriately managed with the use of those lower level outlet gates. And by the way, not overusing them. This dam and spillway is designed to send water over the spillway. That's the design of this. So, I want to debunk that myth a little bit that water only goes over the spillway in a case of an emergency. That's not what we're doing here. We're going to send water over hopefully on a regular basis. But when there is a storm, DEM does put out a bulletin to all dam operators, which gives you guidance on what they would like to see you do with your water level pre-storm. So we'll be doing that. In fact, Dan Perillo, where are you over there? So Dan Perillo, we're going to need to talk about Saturday, right? So we have our first weather event coming. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff we'll be paying close attention to. Anybody know what the water level is today, Ken Goodwin? I didn't hear that. So, yeah, I will tell you, look, DEM is not, they're not the Grim Reaper, okay? We knew that the water level was going to go up based on the storm that came in over the weekend. And by the way, it's going to continue to rise a little bit because, as you all know, upland bodies of water continue to drain downstream, and we're going to see some of that. So DEM wants the owner of the dam to be responsible, and we certainly have been responsive to them, and we intend to be responsible. But I can tell you, I think it was last week when we went to court, it was minus 44 or something like that. I mean, it's just that's unacceptable.
James, come on in.
Oh, thank you. I was waiting for the prompt. Hi, my name is James Pearson. I live over on Nicole Lane. I had a question. First, I want to thank the town for the work they've done to resolve this matter. Really should be applauded, the hard work everyone has put into this. Second, I have a question. Maybe you could address this now, or maybe it's something that has to wait till later. There are a number, from my understanding, a number of right-of-ways already to the pond, and I was wondering if the town has any plans for making sure those right-of-ways are accessible moving forward. That's all. Thank you.
That's something we'll be evaluating as part of the redevelopment plan. Anyone else here? Oh, good. All right.
Roxanne, go ahead. Russ, go ahead.
Anyone else? Anybody? Just because you sit in the front, if you want to leave it right ahead. It's not like school. You can sneak right out. I won't be offended, trust me. Yes, sir.
Hi there. Daniel Schutzberg, Brenda Drive. I'm a newbie here. Bought a house about a year and a half ago. Was very disappointed to learn about what was going on with the pond. Very heartened to hear what's happening. Tell me more about the short-term recreation plans. I'm a boater, kayaker, swimmer. Do I have a chance to get my feet in the water or not?
Well, I don't have anything to tell you about the short-term recreational embrace by the council because right now we're really focused on getting our arms around repair. But I can tell you that the council's plan is to provide the public with greater access. There was one person online who said, there are right-of-ways. What are your plans to deal with the right-of-ways? I've seen these right-of-ways. I mean, they're narrow. Some of them are overgrown. You know, they're between people's houses, that kind of thing. But that's not really public access, right? Or it's certainly not good public access. So I would think that, you know, the council is going to want some answers on that pretty quickly, and we'll look to provide that to them as best we can.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, this is a council that likes answers. So I have some very active bosses,
Oh, yeah.
and rightly so.
My name is Jackie Bryant. I live on Maple Root Pond. My question is, how does the Quidnick Reservoir fit into this whole picture? Because they're the ones that started it in the first place.
Yeah.
And if that can happen again, we're in the same boat.
Yeah, where does Quidnick Reservoir fit in? Well, we own what you see outlined in red with the exception of parcel B. So we own it. They have a mortgage that they need to chase somebody to get paid. They won't be chasing us. You know, they wanted to be out of the business of owning this body of water and getting paid for it. And I suspect it didn't quite work out the way they wanted it to. I'm sure that their legal counsel will be evaluating what their options are and responding appropriately to the change in circumstance. Their balloon payment of $1.5 million is not due to them until the 1st of April next year. So, but that's not to say that there are things that they couldn't do, because if there's a mortgage on this piece of property. So if the mortgage covenants have been violated, whatever they may be, there may be an opportunity for foreclosure there. Stay tuned.
Vincent Genovese, go ahead.
I wonder, is there any necessary now for permits to have a dock? Like was threatened before, you'd have to apply for a permit. Does the DEM require people who've had docks for years, or anyone who has a dock now to have a permit for it?
Any talk of needing a permit to work on a dock or build?
So let me talk about dockage for a minute. And I apologize if I wasn't clear before. The town does not regulate a dock on any body of water in this town. Okay. It is DEM's responsibility to regulate dockage. If you want to build a dock, if you want to build a new dock, if you want to add on to the dock that you own, all of that is handled at DEM. Doesn't have anything to do with the town. I know that there were several myths in the litigation you heard before where, you know, Social Holdings claimed that, you know, the town is supposed to regulate docks. We're not in the dock regulation business. In fact, DEM promulgates their own rules on docks with respect to that. Same thing with insurance, by the way. Yes, we have insurance. Just in case anybody wants to know, the town is insured. So nothing else? Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Tom Bolivar, 14 Raymond's Point. First of all, I want to thank the council. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Would you just, if possible, clarify a little bit where you think the public access will be? I've heard it's going to be in parcel A, but you also mentioned that you have other parts of bodies of land that you may put it in.
I can tell you that I'm certainly no urban planner, okay, or suburban planner in this case. And what I can tell you is when you look at parcel B, it's on the wrong side of the dam structures, okay? I mean, so
I'm sorry if I misspoke. I meant to say parcel A.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. I misspoke. So on parcel A and B are both downstream from the dam structures. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense, you know, to have any kind of a pavilion or anything like that there. It's going to have to be evaluated by the planners that we bring in. Okay, they're going to come up with a redevelopment plan with, you know, and talk to the council about the plans. You know, they're the Imagineers. They're the Walt Disney of beach pavilions and boat ramps and all of that. So we'll see what that looks like and where they think the best place to put it is.
So it could be somewhere other than parcel A.
Correct. Most likely.
Okay. We also talked about rentals. Is it possible to cap it at canoes, kayaks?
Policy discussion for the council
I'm
down the
just trying,
road.
I'm concerned about having too many, if you have, you know, you
Yeah.
can rent a motorboat or you can rent jet skis.
Yep.
We all know that jet skis, nothing against jet ski owners or anybody like that, but you know, if we start having jet ski rentals in there, then it's gonna be a potential problem.
The council's here, they're hearing you. That's really a policy decision for the council to make. And you know, whatever direction they give me on rules and regulations, we'll draft them up and, you know, I'm sure the police will enforce them for sure.
And finally, we talk about drawdowns. If possible, I know you gotta do what you have to do, but can we have the last drawdown a little bit later in the season? A little bit later in October, so we get to enjoy the pond a few extra 2-3 weeks, if possible?
Some of that is driven by the biologists and so forth at DEM. We may or may not have a lot of say in that. I do know that the council is very interested, like, in a perfect world when things are fixed and, you know, you have access to the pond, better access to the pond and so forth. Their goal is to make as much use of the season, if you will. You know, for those of us who've, you know, lived longer than 20 years or so, we've seen the seasons get skewed a little bit, right? Where you're going later, to your point, you're going later into October, later into September, where when we were kids, it wasn't the case. I mean, you could stand at the bus stop in October and you had to have on a coat and maybe even think about snow. That doesn't happen now. So, you know, it could be that if the season is skewed, maybe DEM will go along with that, but they're going to drive the bus on that.
Thank you once again.
You're welcome. Come on up. Right ahead.
I would like to know, Diane Bryant, and I live on Maple Roof. I would like to know, is Maple Roof Pond part of the acquisition of you buying of them, of Johnson Pond by?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't know the answer to your question, okay? So I will get that answer to your question and we'll get it out there. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. If there aren't any other questions, then I thank you for coming out and giving me your attention.